On today's podcast, we're going to interview Chef Michael Cimarusti of Providence in LA. I think the best restaurant in Los Angeles, and should have 3 Michelin stars. It will get 3 Michelin stars. I will guarantee it. I know it. Also, if you're curious about cooking with tongs and why chefs like Mike and myself don't cook with tongs in the kitchen, you might want to stay tuned and listen up. Welcome to the Dave Chang Show, part of the Ringer Podcast Network, presented by Majordomo Media. Thank you, Yola Tango, as always. We're going to have Chef Michael Cimarusti of Providence, one of my most favorite chefs, one of my most favorite restaurants. I'm a huge fan of Providence. Celebrating 20 years cannot be understated, the significance of that, and also the importance of that restaurant for the LA dining scene as a whole. But before we get into that, I just want to quickly talk about one thing. And it's going to be a reference to Chef Mike about tongs or no tongs. And the reason I bring this up is I just for the record, I don't want any pull quotes. I don't want Chef or any of the cooks or people I know that work on the Bear to be upset, or Chris Store. This is not it. So this is how I imagine it to happen. On the cover of the new marketing for the Bear that's coming out, I think in mid-June, and very excited for that. A lot of my friends are on that, working on the show. And it is singularly by far the best representation of what happens in a kitchen, but it's really not even about food. Anyway, I digress. On the marketing that you see on social media, they have all the characters, and at the top you have Carm, the main character, protagonist, holding a lamb chop with tongs. Listen, I don't think a restaurant of that caliber would normally have tongs. You don't cook with tongs. Chef Mike and I are going to talk a little bit more about to tong or not to tong. And there's something specific that he uses in his restaurant that you don't see too often, particularly in today's dining. But cooking with your hands, cooking with other tools, that's really a signifier. I don't want to say every fucking restaurant, but every restaurant that's trying to be the very, very best, super ambitious, where, you know, a place where all the little things start to stack up and consistently you're allowed to be, you know, serving some of the very best food in the world, in the city. That kind of restaurant, like Providence, I don't think I've ever seen someone where the proteins or vegetables, for that matter, are cooked with tongs. Tweezers are one thing, forceps are another, but even still, I don't think that a lot of places would rather not cook that way. And you know, you're cooking with your hands, a spoon, and in Cimarusti's instance, you're cooking with a fork. So, listen, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a second, but the way I view what happened, without having watched the season 4 of The Bear, is there must have been a new cook in the kitchen cooking the lamb chop with tongs, and I think Carr must have taken it out because it doesn't make any sense otherwise. Or it's just a marketing thing, and there was no input from anybody else. But either way, I'm not making a big deal of it. Please don't. I'm just wanting to use this as a reference point to talk about tongs. Let's get an interview with Chef Michael Cimarusti, celebrating 20 years of Providence. Also the chef and owner of Connie and Ted's, a New England seafood spot here in Los Angeles. Very busy, very great restaurant as well, much more casual. So here you go. With Chef Mike from Providence. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks.
I feel like you've done a few things with us over the years.
For sure.
20 years of Providence. Congratulations.
Coming up in a month, yeah.
Yeah, man. I just saw a chef from Den was in town.
Oh, yeah. Zayu, it was amazing. I mean, he's one of my favorite chefs. I feel like his restaurant in Tokyo has kind of like redefined what modern kaiseki can be in Japan.
100%.
And, you know, the food is like fun. It has an incredible sense of humor. But behind it all, there's like, you know, very serious technique. He has tons of respect for, you know, Japanese cuisine and its traditional modes and everything, but he has to make it his own.
But it's fun.
It's fun. It's delicious. It's like, and we had a great time. I promised him if he came to LA that I'd take him fishing. So Friday.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, Friday, the day after, we went out with coastal charters and spent a day, you know, fishing local for bass. And Zayu is, As good as a chef he is, he's probably a better fisherman. He's like unbelievable.
You should follow his exploits fishing on Instagram.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's always on the water.
But before I get into that, I was musing before you came on, because I just saw the new ad for the bear, and I'm sure, like myself and other chefs, you get asked the dumbest questions about the show all the time.
Yes.
In some ways, I'm happy that it's the case, because it's changed, like, what's your favorite dish to cook?
Right.
What style of cuisine are you? Blah, blah, blah. Now it's just all the bear.
Have you seen the bear? Yeah.
At least
what
once,
do you think about the bear?
once a day?
Yeah. Is it real?
And I know, a bunch of people we know are working on the show, and that's what makes it great. But the poster came out, and I was like, wow, it's funny. Nobody's really said anything about it. And I don't even want to say anything online, because I'm friends with those guys, and I'm sure it wasn't their decision. It was somebody on marketing. But the chef, Carm, is holding a lamb chop with tongs.
Oh, my God.
Right?
Oh, no. It's jumped the shark.
It's jumped the shark. And I was like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
Like, to me, that's like a chef of his caliber that's worked in the kitchens that he's worked in.
Yeah.
Would never
have a pair of tongs.
have a pair of tongs.
Yeah.
You know?
That's weird.
I know this. I don't want Chris Storer to get fucking mad at me. This is not. I have no doubt this is somebody at FX on the marketing division, or it's just one of those things that nobody would give a shit about. People that watching the show are like, what's the big deal?"
Yeah, you're probably right. I think it's going to go over the head of most people.
So before I become too obnoxious about it, I would like to put that responsibility on you. What is the issue here?
What is the issue with tongs?
There's not really an issue, but in certain kinds of cooking.
In certain kinds of cooking, yeah, tongs are a little ham-handed as a tool. They're not going to allow you to do like very precise work. Tongs in our kitchen, we use them to handle charcoal to add to the grill, like that kind of thing.
Family meal.
Yeah, family meal. Yeah, family meal salad.
Things that
fruit
are
salad. Yeah,
pasta. But I find the hardest thing to answer to people that ask the question of like, hey, do you like the bear or something like that? Is if it ever gets in a conversation about tongs, it's like I'm talking about pro-life or pro-choice.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you're a bad person. I just think in a certain kind of environment, they're foreboding.
Yeah. You're right. I don't know. I feel like, with that show, the majority of the viewers are not in the restaurant space, and the ones that are in the restaurant space will probably overlook it. But you're absolutely right. Yeah, I mean,
it's the
like,
first thing I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah. It's a weird thing, man. That's a weird thing. It's a very strange choice creatively.
Maybe he's holding the tongs. This is what happened. Maybe Carm's holding the tongs because a new cook was using tongs and he took it from him.
And he's about to throw them out the window.
That's really what happened. Okay? So before you guys pull quote this. But besides that, the reason I brought this up is I think you're the only kitchen I've seen in America, the only kitchen, where there might be people that use it on their station here or there, but I've never seen it where it's universal. This is the standard issue requirement of how you're going to cook with, cook here is a cooking fork.
Yeah. I love roast forks.
I mean, to me, it was like, wow. It was like seeing a director that only does things in like film or something like that. I was like, wow. Of all the things you have in your kitchen, I was like, that's pretty rad.
You know how it comes about is like I gift people them roast forks, especially when they move to this. Like if when you graduate to become either the fish cook or the meat cook, those people I give them roast forks because it's the best tool to use on a grill. Like bar none. There's no better tool.
Why is that?
Just because, especially if you have like a really good one. For me, the best ones are Bakelite. They're old. Most of them made in like the 50s or 60s here in the United States. And you can find them all over eBay or whatever, or at a garage sale or a flea market. And they're tools that were made like to last, which is vastly different than the tools that are made today. And I love them, and they're like elegant, and they're like ergonomic. They work perfectly. They work beautifully. And like to get underneath a delicate piece of fish that's grilling just perfectly. There's no better tool. If you go at it with a spatula, forget it. You're going to ruin the skin. And the same thing with beef or duck.
You're going over something too quickly. people would think that's the only way to get a piece of fish off a pan or grill would be a spatula.
Right.
Why are you saying that's not the appropriate way?
Because, well, I mean, the thing that roast forks can do that a spatula can is get between the grill grates and get underneath whatever it is that you're grilling and lift directly up, which is like, you can't do that with a spatula. A spatula just rides over the grates. And so when you meet whatever it is that you're grilling, if it's not, I mean, if it doesn't have skin, fine. You're probably not going to mess it up. But if it does have skin, like a delicate piece of fish, like kinky, one of my favorite fish, or keen med-eye, or black bass, or black cod, and, if you go at it with a spatula first thing, you're going to ruin it. The best thing to do is just lift up a corner with a roast fork and then slide a spatula under and flip it over. It's just the most delicate, respectful way to like do that one motion.
I have a question. Do you use a roasting fork at home?
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
You have to.
You have to. Yeah. Even in a pan, like just to get underneath something. Because like if you ever like when you're cooking something, specifically like a piece of fish in a pan, and you go at it with a spatula, oftentimes you like crack the skin in that corner or whatever. If you go at it with something smaller like a fork, it just, you can lift it up, get a little leverage, and then slide something.
And how would you describe a fork? Because it's not a curved fork.
Some are not. Like the straight forks I think are better for meat. Curved forks I think are better for fish. It's just the way we do it. Yeah.
And that was the first thing I noticed. Does anyone else comment that at all?
I don't know.
It's just me.
People may see it and wonder why.
I was like, man.
But it becomes like especially because I give those tools to the cooks. Like I expect them to use them, and also I think it's like a badge of honor. Like when you're given one of those, it's like, okay, you achieved something. You got to that final station in the kitchen.
And when this explanation happens, the one element that I feel gets sort of over people's heads to some degree is when I say, if you're using a fork or a spoon, you actually have to touch the fish, and I think touch is so important about intuition, particularly fish cookery or just in general. Like you can't use the fork without oftentimes another hand.
Mm-hmm. You're right.
And I think it makes that tactile thing. And yeah, it can be hot. It can hurt your hand. There's just like no way around it. So a lot of people might think like, why is it important to touch your food? Mm-hmm. Besides, I think like there's a spiritual connection of like being in there. What else happens with your other hand?
I think what you're talking about is like a larger kind of situation that exists in restaurants like Providence or like Momofuku Ko, real restaurants where the cooking is very personal and it's very detailed, very idiosyncratic. Like you have to get in there. You have to be touching it, feeling it, smelling it, tasting it, listening to it. Like every sense is required, like really at a certain level to achieve like the kind of consistency and the kind of results that you're looking for. Really, it requires all of your senses, all of your attention, all of your intent. Like there's just no two ways about it. And I feel like that's the kind of cooking that we strive to do at Providence. And I know there's like all sorts of other restaurants around this country and around the world that are in that exact same boat where it's an intense thing. You know what I mean? Like you have to really care passionately about the food in order to like achieve a certain level of standard. And I think that, using both hands and really being involved, really getting in there is just emblematic of that level of care and attention.
Exactly. And that's why I think the fork or any other tool that's not a tong, it's about being closer, having things tactile. It's just a difficult way of cooking as well.
Yeah.
Compared to just using a tong from a distance. And I don't know why, but because it's not you actually have to get skilled at doing it. It's another thing where it's hard to describe to somebody like why you would make it more difficult for yourself to some degree.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I guess you could look at it that way. It makes it more difficult, but at the same time, it's like anything else. Like once you get to a certain level, like nuance is everything. Detail is everything. Like that's where it is. I think, it's not unlike, like professional sports or something like that. Like the fine line between, a good player and a great player is sometimes indistinguishable. Like, and especially to a layman or someone that doesn't really have a deep understanding of what's going on. But I think all of those things, all those layers of care and attention, I think they ultimately add up to making the experience what it is in a truly great restaurant. Like, perfect example. Last week I was in New York and we went to Cesar, which is
Cesar Ramirez,
from
Brooklyn Fare, formerly.
Fare. Yeah, I mean, always marveled at his food, and I feel like I feel like one of the great restaurants of New York that I missed when I was there was Boulay.
So Boulay was in Tribeca. David Boulay, who passed 2-3 years ago. And it was a couple locations. They had a Boulay bakery, and then he moved Boulay, and then he what was the German restaurant that he had?
Danube.
That's where Cesar was as well, with Mario Longiger.
Yeah.
Right. And Cesar was a chef de cuisine. But anyway, like it was. It's hard again to describe to people what is the significance of David Boulay and Boulay at that time, right? In the early 90s?
I mean, all I know is the legend, like the things that I would hear about the kitchen, and how like there was no menu, there were no recipes. It was just like, it was all about his inspiration. And he would use anything to cook with, like go open a bottle of Chateau d'Yquem. I want to make a sauce with the strawberries or whatever. Like he was just insane, and his food was extravagant and generous. And he was also known like Bernard Pacot to get the very best ingredients, to be just a freak for quality. Yeah, and I think that all those things you can say about David Boulay, you can say about Cesar, and like his level of touch and the way, like I was watching the cooks, because it's an open, you're actually sitting in the kitchen, like the stage is the kitchen at Cesar, and all of us are just sitting in the theater essentially. But watching the cooks barely use tools. They're all wearing black gloves and touching and handling and cooking. I watched the meat cook cooking a squab on the plancha and like just holding it there at a certain angle, turning it over, holding it at another angle, and just that was no tools involved. Like that was the way they cooked everything, and it was it's just, his cooking is brilliant. The food is simple or deceptively so.
Deceptively simple that I think people may underestimate how hard it is to execute.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, I mean, the quality is just amazing.
I mean, you probably get some of the best ingredients anywhere.
And what I love too now in this new iteration is that he's starting like cook like things that are not. I mean, they certainly weren't in his repertoire before. Like he did a sauce with Japanese king mackerel with pasilla chili. And then
that's not in his normal wheelhouse.
That was not in the formal wheelhouse. And then the Wagyu beef that he serves now, he's serving with a mole and huitlacoche. So like things from his culture that I never saw him use at Brooklyn Fare, but so excited that they're part of his repertoire now. And the food was, just phenomenal.
I mean, Cesar's always been one of the very best. And I had so many friends that worked for him or under him. And I had a meal when he for a hot second before Brooklyn Fare, he was at Bar Blanco. I can't remember the West Village, but everything that guy's he's just one of those guys that are like, okay, you are gifted at this in a way, and you think about it in a way. And, he's a modern day version of Boulay in a lot of different ways. But, I wanted to talk about the fork just to start, because I was like, oh, what's a good way to introduce Mike to the audience that he's probably never spoken about, or probably people haven't really heard at all, was cooking with a fork.
Yeah, cooking with a fork. I do it at home. It's just, I don't know. I think it probably started when I was at the Cirque when I was a kid, and like all the French guys all use forks, and I was like, oh shit, I think I gotta figure this out.
So back up. Was that your first restaurant job after CIA?
No. After CIA, I was still working for Larry Forgione.
And who's Larry Forgione? I feel like this is a great opportunity to like. There's so many listeners that I have no idea.
Yeah, let's get into it.
Yeah,
okay.
Who is Larry Forgione?
Okay, well, if you live in Manhattan now, you certainly know of Larry's son, who's Mark. But Larry, Mark's dad, was like, to me anyway, if you talk about the foundation of American cookery, names like Alice Waters, Larry Forgione, Mark Miller, Jimmy Schmidt. I mean, who else would you put on that list?
Waxman.
Yeah, Jonathan Waxman, absolutely. Those were the people that were like really kind of like created the world that we live in now. You know what I mean? Like we are standing on their shoulders. And Larry, his restaurant, American Place, had two iterations. One was a little bit further uptown, I think in the 60s on the east side. And then the restaurant that I worked at was on 32nd Street between Park and Madison, I think it was. And it was a beautiful space. It became, Terrence Brennan's place.
Picheline.
Picheline, yeah, it became that. But anyway, Larry, he kind of took what James Beard started and ran with it. Like in the sense that Larry's reverence for ingredients was no different than any of the great French chefs that you want to talk about. But what distinguished Larry from so many other chefs is that his ingredients were all American. Everything we used was from the United States. He had sources like all over the country for these little things. And this is back in the early 90s when FedExing food across the country overnight was sort of in its infancy. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we would get, just the best of everything from all over the country, like Crowley cheddar, like these little white asparagus that were raised in Michigan, like tiny, like smaller than a pencil. I still remember we had a dish on the menu. It was called asparagus in ambush, and it was just like a simple herb beurre blanc, toasted brioche, and it was a whole bunch of those little baby white asparagus spears, just like poached and then quickly sautéed, and then blanketed with Crowley cheddar and gratinade. And then that, went on the plate and just sat in this herb brioche, and it was just beautiful. And that could be a very French dish, Maybe they would use Gruyere instead of cheddar, but it could be something you would find in a French menu. But Larry made it American. And that's emblematic of the work that he did. And he, his career, spanned quite a while. And I worked for him in New York, and then he took over the Beekman Tavern up in Rhinebeck, New York, mm-hmm. which is right near the CIA campus. And because I'd worked at American Place for my externship and then worked on weekends all through the rest of school, and when we graduated, he offered myself and my now wife a job there. And so we helped him open that place.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was very cool. And so I worked for Larry for a couple of years altogether.
And then was it Le Cirque after?
No, then I went back to a little restaurant that I started in when I was a kid at the age of 17, which was in a small town in rural Pennsylvania, New Hope, Pennsylvania, which is near where I grew up in Jersey. And it was like the special occasion we'd go to when I was a kid with my parents. And I got a job there. I worked there when I was a kid. I went back there as kind of like a sous chef, but I had no idea what I was doing. I was just like a 21 years old. I didn't know shit really. But that was good because it's the kind of place where you have to do everything. You have to do a little pastry. Yeah, you got to butcher. You have to prep. Exactly. You do it all. So I did that for a little while and then moved back to New York. And
you're like, I can't stay here. I got to go.
It became, it was great. It was a great environment. I learned a lot. I learned what I didn't know. You know what I mean? Which I think that's an incredibly
Can you explain that? A lot of people might say that, but I don't know if people that haven't lived that life understand.
Yeah, you get to a certain point where you start to realize what your limitations are. And being a professional chef is about having a repertoire and then learning how to use that repertoire to build and evolve. And if you sort of stop the learning process too soon, your repertoire is going to be limited. And that's just, and your ability to absorb new information because your repertoire is limited also, I think, is stifled. So I really feel like you, as a chef, I think any artistic endeavor, whether you're a guitar player or a graphic artist or a painter or whatever, the evolution it has to be something that's constant, and the learning curve it's exponential. It just doesn't end, because if it does, you might as well just hang it up. You know what I mean? That's when you're done. When you really stop learning and you don't have the humility to be able to learn anymore, then that's it. You gotta quit.
Just as a side conversation to this, do you think that cooks today, with all the access of information and knowledge, know more than cooks back in the day? I
think they're more aware, but awareness doesn't equate to knowledge. And also you may, all the things you can glean from social media and all the incredible number of images that you can scroll through on a daily basis in a social media feed, they may make you better at presentation or something like that. But a photo is a photo and it exists in 2 dimensions, and you can't taste it and you can't smell it, and you have no idea how they got, that chef, whoever it is that you're looking at, got from A to B, right? And so there's whatever it is that you're looking at, if there's so much that's not there. You know what I mean? There's so much information that's missing from that photo. And that's the kind of information that only comes from working. That's the kind of information that only comes from like years and years and years of experience. And yes, there are gifted people who, in every field, you know, sports, art, drama, whatever it is, like there are gifted people that can skip many of those steps and still like achieve the same results. But that's not everybody, and those are the outliers, really. And so, yeah, I feel like it's a question of putting in the time.
But I'm just trying to like lay out what it was like in the mid early 90s, where there literally is no information.
No, it's true.
There's nothing. Nobody's telling you, hey, you should work at this kitchen.
Right.
You have no idea. It's totally blind. In
totally blind.
Word of mouth, and that's about it.
Yeah, gourmet, food and wine, Bon Appetit, things like that. Whatever you saw on Julia Child or The Great Chefs of the West, or like all of those things. Like, yeah, I mean, it is crazy. You know, when I finally decided like I need to go to France and learn, it came from like one of the guys that I was working with at Le Cirque showed me his resume, and he had like 3-star, 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 3-star. I was like, oh my God. Like I have to get out of here. I can't stay in New York anymore. Like I came to New York to learn. Now I'm like, I got to get out of New York so I can learn something.
But before you went to Europe, you were at Le Cirque.
Le Cirque, yeah.
And at that time, I think this is peak Le Cirque at an era in New York where it was a very, very important, significant restaurant.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, it was great. It was the best of everything. First of everything, first morels, first white asparagus, first white truffles, first soft shells. Oh my God. I mean, just the quality of the ingredients we used to get there, like soft shells like this, like Hotel Primes, remember those? Like tiny little things. Like you'd have to put 5 on a plate just to make it look like worthwhile. Like incredible ingredients that are gone now.
It was a restaurant that was also where the powerful, the stylish, it was like the center of New York in a lot of ways. But it was one of the times where very few where you got that crowd, but the food was also at a very, very extremely high level. Mm-hmm. I thought one of the more interesting things about Le Cirque was that it was, as an Asian kid growing up, I was like, besides Alex Lee at Danielle, and Danielle doesn't get enough credit for actually not giving a shit about
who you were. Yeah.
Who you were could not be more influential in that regard. You know, he worked with Sota for a while. And who was Sota
Long
Kun?
while. Sota Kun was a Cambodian gentleman whose family got him out of Cambodia during the war. His family were jewelers, and so they had a little bit of money, and they were able to get him out of Cambodia and to France. And, we never got into how he got into cooking, but what I do know of his time in France was that he was working at L'Orchestrade, that was Alain Sandarin's restaurant before he opened the place on the Place de Madeleine in New York, which is escaping the name is escaping me right now.
Sandarin's also a godlike figure in French cuisine, 3 Michelin stars, etc.
Yeah. Anyway, so he was working there as a cook, and he was working alongside Alain Passat, who is, of Arpège fame, 3 Michelin stars. And that restaurant, L'Orchestrade, actually became Arpège. It was 7 Rue de Varennes in the 7th arrondissement in Paris. But anyway, it's 84 Rue de Varennes. Anyway, Sota and Passat were working there together. At a certain point, he and Danielle crossed paths. Danielle was offered the job at La Régence in New York, and Danielle sent Sota first. And Sota kind of got to New York before Danielle and kind of, got the lay of the land a little bit, and then Danielle came. And then the two of them worked together from that point until when Danielle left Le Cirque. I think it was 1992 or 93, or I don't remember, 93, 94 or something like that.
Something like that, because he opened the new Danielle at the Surrey, I think it was like 94,
yeah.
I think, 94, 95.
Yeah. And so... Sota was there by his side the whole time that Danielle's star was in ascension. And, Sota's one of the best cooks I ever met. He's one of the kindest people I ever met. He's also, he's whatever, 5'2" and one of the scariest people I've ever met. I mean, he could smoke a Benson and Hedges 100 without ever taking it out of his lips or touching it with his hands. He was a madman in so many ways, but he was also like the kindest, gentlest soul you'd ever meet. When I decided it was time to get to propose to my wife, Soto would take me out between lunch and dinner to go shopping for a ring.
No.
Like, I bought my engagement ring for my wife on his recommendation. Like, we would go around and look at places, and if he wasn't with me, I would take him to a place and say, I found this ring. What do you think? Because he had that knowledge of jewelry as well. Anyway, we'd go to his house after service, a bunch of the cooks. He's just kind, like, sweet man. Anyway, and then he was also the last chef of Le Cirque to earn 4 stars when Le Cirque moved from the Villiard from 65th Street to the Villiard houses. Soto, when Danielle left, Soto would not take the job. Cirio offered him the job and he would not take it because he said, and this is I don't think it would happen in this world. I don't know that anybody would be as humble anymore, but Soto said it's not right for a Cambodian man to have the job of the chef as the biggest French restaurant in the United States. And so Cirio hired Sylvain Portet.
It was Ducasse alum.
Yeah, Ducasse alum. And then finally when Sylvain decided to move on, Soto was like, all right, I've had enough. I'm going to do it now. And then he earned 4 stars and, just an incredible cook. I remember dishes that he would make when we would have VIPs that would come in and, the chef wanted to cook for him. And Soto, or if Soto wanted to cook for someone, he would go for like humble ingredients. Like most chefs would go for foie gras and black truffles or white truffles or whatever. Soto would go for a chicken and roast it with like ginger and lemongrass and kaffir lime and honey and like create this incredible like fricassee of chicken in a cocotte and serve the whole thing out into the dining room. Like very generous, very delicious, very different. Like I remember one time Cirio was in the hospital. Soto wanted to cook something for him. And he had these prawns, like head-on prawns, and he made this soup because Cirio was not supposed to be eating salt or fat. So he made this soup like just with the head-on prawns and again like a bunch of aromatics, but more like on the Asian flavors like lemongrass and ginger and that kind of thing. But then he finished it with sage. I will never forget it. Because I thought like that's what a crazy choice, like to finish that soup with sage. But when I tasted it, it was absolutely delicious. And I think he did it because it was his culture and the ingredients that he liked or loved the most, but also sage representing something that Cirio would appreciate and feel, was a familiar flavor. And it was absolutely delicious.
And just you, as a young cook, you'd collect stories about Soto because he was this, it's funny, he's like before the internet, that's like, he was this godlike figure.
He was.
He really had this reverence of like, there's this guy Soto-kun, and like all you need to know is he's like on this very, very small group of people that you can talk about. And I mean, like that's why I was like, I don't know. I love having the ability to be able to talk about some of the chefs that people today have like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you're right. But I mean, Alex Lee was right there too. Like Alex is like unsung hero in a way of Danielle's like career and stardom. People like Alex and Sota, Willie Savarese. You remember him?
I don't.
Oh, he was like legendary, like saucier at Le Cirque, like absolutely amazing. I don't even know what happened to that guy. He like disappeared into obscurity. Remy Laveau, Remy?
I know Remy.
Remy, he lives in LA now. He's a private chef. Still, like I can hear his voice sometimes in my dreams. Like he would make me shudder and shake when I was a kid. Like he's just like, woof. Like,
but just to see like Soto or Alex Lee, who's a very imposing figure in control of a French kitchen, I was just like, that was like as a kid that needed sort of to see how outside of Bruce Lee, I was like, whoa, this is like happening here, and it's a merit-based system. So it's just like, these guys are as good as anybody out there.
Oh, yeah.
So I just had so much reverence for the both of those guys.
Yeah. And deservedly so. I mean, again, like as I think, Soto proved that out when he went out, finally decided like, okay, I'm going to take the chef position. And then it was the last time that Le Cirque earned 4 stars from the New York Times. His cooking was like very, very different.
You wore toques back then. in that kitchen, right?
No, we didn't have to.
I feel like Sota always had a toque as a
He
pitcher.
often would. Like if we had something going on, he would. But I mean, in that kitchen, I work with like, I work with Ducasse, Verger, Gerard Boyer, Paul Bocuse. I mean, just like incredible people would come through there for, special dinners. And for a young cook, it was. I don't know if you could do better. Like really, I felt like the opportunities.
You won the lotto.
Yeah, like the opportunities that restaurant presented to me were unparalleled. They came at a cost. Like we, and this is something I was talking about with Zayu when we were coming back from fishing the other day. Is because I was talking about how we used to work, like in New York or when I worked in France. Like minimum, like 12 hours a day was like. That was pretty reasonable, actually, like back in the day. And everybody was expected to work 6 days a week. And, in France was even more. We'd work 15, 16 hours a day, 6 days a week. And, and Zayu said that's the way it used to be in Japan as well. And the point that he made was, he said he thinks that's why it takes cooks longer to develop now. If you use Malcolm Gladwell's theory of 10,000 hours, like the more work you put in, the faster you're going to achieve mastery at whatever it is that you're, pursuing. And so I think he actually has a point 100%. There. I mean, it's hard. It's not easy, and it's certainly not for everyone. But it also like does a good job of like separating the wheat from the chaff. Like the people just not willing to put in the effort that it takes to get there. But whatever. I mean, I think all of the changes that we've seen take place in our industry, like since COVID and the Me Too movement and everything else, I think in every way, they are positive and they're going to help propel the industry into a better place. I just think like for folks like me and you and others that I know, like we're maybe a little slower to adapt to all of these changes, but like my heart is absolutely in it. And I feel like it makes for a better world for the young cooks that are coming up behind us. I don't think
anybody disagrees about professionalizing in a way a business that needed it overly so. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, cooking is still a real hands-on, blue-collar like profession, craft, art. The only way to do it is by like doing it. Like the best recipe I think ever is Barbeau's it was a halibut recipe, and the recipe is like you got to cook it every day for 6 months.
Yeah,
it seems obnoxious, but it was like no, that's actually actually true. It's like that's what it is, and I think it's harder. I don't know if anybody can actually bridge that gap because now you have a lot of younger cooks that would like to work more, even if it's free, but you can't. So we'll see.
Where do you stand on the whole art versus craft debate?
It's a hot button subject. I think for the longest time I thought it was a craft because that's what the chefs I work for said it was. Mm-hmm. And I think today I now see it as art for sure. Yes, there's craft involved 100%. But I think that even the ability to express it yourself or some vision by manipulating your food, it's edible art. Mm-hmm. It's not even edible art. I should say it's like a sand mandala. You're making something with intent, and then it's going down the toilet 8 hours later.
Yeah, it's ephemeral.
So it makes it the best and the worst simultaneously, but I do believe it's an art because I think when I was younger, I was like, it's not an art because I was just so like just a dude. I was like, no, this is fucking craft. And then the more and more I thought about it, I was like, no, I think this is certainly an art because food can be subversive. Food can be extremely thoughtful in a way that you never could imagine before. It could make you think about a flavor that makes you think about a memory that you never thought was possible. To me, like a chair could do that, maybe. But
have to be a pretty cool chair.
Pretty cool chair, but like that's why I think it can make you think and feel emotions that most crafts probably can't do.
Now that I 100% agree with. I think food is like among the most evocative of the media. I mean, it's not media. I guess you have to go if in order to make my point, I have to call it art. But I think it's the most evocative art, or among the most evocative arts.
You see, it's still a little bit uncomfortable, I think, for you to talk about. It's weird.
Yeah. Because I do see myself as like a craftsman. You know what I mean?
Right.
And like the Japanese use the term shokunin, and I feel like that's more, for me, that's a more comfortable thing to say, which is someone that, there's regiment to what you do, and there's discipline to what you do,
argue
and you carry on the same thing all the time.
Shokunin is artistry.
Yeah,
right?
You're right. Yeah.
When you're making a joint and there's nothing, on like you're putting basically two wooden pieces together just through pressure. That takes enormous amount of skill to do something that very few people can do. But the cleanliness and the beauty of that is, to me, that's when it can be art to me. But I spent so much time talking about this, thinking about it, and I think I have come full circle. And I feel like I've written about it. But to me, a cuisine that I love, people think that I fucking don't. I love it, and I know Alice extremely well. But I do think when Alice and what Jeremiah Tower were doing back in the day, of just basically like, hey, we're just serving shit in its purest form, I see that more art than food. It was like very emblematic of what was happening in that area too. This is just like not what anyone else is doing. Not true. A lot of other places were sort of serving pure, but not in America. And I think that is like one school. And I see now the different kinds of schools of cooking that have sort of all the way from Japan, whatever. They're all very similar to like schools of art, styles of art.
Right.
And one of the styles that I find and I think about quite a bit is the school of Passard, school of fire. Something that I know that you, many other people, David Kinch, a lot of American chefs, Boulay, especially Boulay, to the point where I think now he's probably the most significant chef, more so. I think he's eclipsed, in my opinion, a lot of the modern chefs in the totality of like the influence he's had on food. That's just my opinion. And one side is like, I feel like he's the one end of the spectrum, and the other end you have Robuchon, which is precision, exacting. How should I say? Everything has got to be the same.
Yeah,
and both are very difficult to do.
Right.
But this school where it's all about intuition and taking a chance that it might not be perfect, but you're swinging for the fences in a lot of ways is a more beautiful endeavor to me.
Yeah. I think Passad's, like the meals that I've had there have been like among the best I've ever had in my life. I mean, I took my kids there when they were like, my son was like, 12, and my daughter was 16. Maybe he was even younger, and he doesn't eat vegetables. And he ate a meal that consisted of, I don't know how many courses, but the vast majority of them were just vegetarian, right? And he ate everything, and we left, and he was like, I was like, what, dude, what was up with that? Like, I've never seen you eat that many vegetables in your life. He goes, well, number one, I don't want to make you look bad, but number two, it was delicious, and it was like beet sushi with geranium oil. Like one of the most delicious things I've ever eaten. Utterly simplistic, you know what I mean? But it was so good. I don't know. I mean, I worked at Passat when I was a kid, and it was in the phase when he was still a 2-star restaurant and working to get the third.
So you're there, the legendary crew.
Yeah, it was like
Bossi's there, Barbeau's there.
Yeah, it was a crazy time, and it was the hardest I've ever worked. I felt like I don't know. I left Le Cirque after I'd been there for a couple of years, and we had 10, 12 cooks in the kitchen doing 200 covers, and then went to Arpège, was 10 cooks in the kitchen, 12 cooks in the kitchen doing 30 covers or 25 covers, and I never felt more pressure in my life. It was just crazy, and all of the work was very exacting, and it was all like here in your hands, like above the cutting board. And I remember my hands were just like cut up to hell all the time. Because of all the work that was just so exacting and had to be done just perfectly so. I mean, it was crazy. It really was crazy. And, that was a place where you get there at 8 o'clock in the morning, and there was, if lunch didn't go too long, you would maybe get a little break in the afternoon, and then you go back for service at 6 o'clock or so. And then you'd leave right before the last train in Paris, which would be midnight. So it was like, yeah, it was nuts. I lost like 40 pounds in the first month I was there. Like, yeah, you just work and work and work and work.
What did you see that you haven't seen since?
It was the first time I ever saw like a level of precision where, like an example, there was a langoustine carpaccio that was on the menu at that time, which is like raw langoustine, had to be peeled before service. And then during service, you would slice them thin, put them in a kind of into a round shape the best you could. And then the sauce for that was creme fraiche and caviar and a little quatre épices and a little bit of sea salt. And all of those things had to be measured at the moment during service. So like I'd never cooked with that level of precision before. But at the same time, like the dish itself looked deceptively simple, but there was like a great deal of like time and effort and testing that went into creating what it was. The arpège egg is another example. Like, you know, just warmed egg, a little bit of gray salt on top, floated in a water bath, and then whipped cream.
Little maple was in there too.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Whipped cream. Again, quatre épices, and then finished with maple. Yeah, and another incredibly simple thing, but you eat it unbelievably satisfying. There's a warm lobster salad like Homard Bleu, which was like very thin sliced turnips. You had to blanch them in boiling salted water, pull them out while they're still like, had a little texture to them, but very translucent. Lobster cooked à la minute, pull it out of the shell while it's still warm, never let it chill. You know, it goes on the plate with this vinaigrette of honey and sherry vinegar, almost equal parts. Freshly chopped rosemary just sprinkled over the meat of the lobster, and then covered with those translucent turnips. And that was it. Again, and then a little bit more of that honey and sherry vinegar dressing. Incredibly simple, and not like 5 ingredients on the plate, but again, something you'll never forget when you eat it.
I remember having this conversation with the diner that came back, and it's not a dish I've had from Passard because I don't know if he has it anymore, but that was a period where he was probably like 5 years into his vegetarian only menu. And it was the beet with just a little bit of balsamic on it. And
but I think that's the geranium beet with geranium oil in sushi that I was talking about, because he rings the plate with the balsamic vinegar.
But it's like a roasted beet.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's a different thing.
Different dish.
Okay, yeah.
And the whole idea, I should say, a lot of his plating with the thinly cut translucent vegetables is a style he invented.
And a standard now.
It's just like so beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
So of course you should plate it that way.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought that was the first time when someone came back from dinner, showed me some pictures, and I was like, what is that?
What am I missing? Yeah.
What is that? And like, you're telling me that was like the best course you've had? I was like, so hard for me to connect because that confusion where the picture does not match up with my perception of what my friend is explaining, his joy that's to me why it's art too. Where I'm like,
right, yeah.
I'm like, whoa. Because like once you see all the little things and when you taste it and you're tasting things that you can't see that are there, you're like, wow, this is mastery. And because people are questioning, well, that's just, what is that? I find that to be a memory I'll never forget, as I was like, oh, food can be something completely different as well. So.
I think, his food is also like, it's so much about, just presenting things in a very, very pure way. When I was there, we would do this thing called the triple grillade de veau, which was crazy. It seemed like, I don't know, almost medieval. Like every day, start a whole rack of veal on the grill, cooked like for over hours, very slowly, just keep manipulating it, turning it, until you imagine like 7-bone veal roast. It's a big thing to cook on a grill. Most people would never think of cooking it that way, but that's how we cooked it. Never went in the oven. Then a whole veal kidney in the fat, also cooked on the grill, just turned over hours and hours and hours. And then riz de veau or sweetbread, same thing, big, beautiful, like French sweetbreads. And the whole thing would just go out on a silver tray, the rack, the kidney, the sweetbread, go into the dining room. Captains would cut you a portion of each. And that would be, and maybe a little bit of sea salt, some natural juices. Like one of the things that blew me away that I never saw before would, like, we do a turbo on the bone for 2, and sear it, cook it nicely, baste it a little bit, then take it, Bordier butter, just like 60 grams, like 2 ounces. Just put it on top of the thing, leave it in a hot place, let the butter melt over it while the fish rests. Then right before it would be served, reheat it, take that butter, scrape it off the tray with a rubber spatula, just finish with a little bit of more salt, a little bit of vinegar. That's the sauce. You're done. What else do you need? But impactful, like incredibly simple. Couldn't be any more simple, but talk about like delivering the flavor of turbo, no better way, right?
I mean, I know you just explained it, but for somebody that you should look at some of his photos of his food. How do you explain to somebody who's like, this takes extraordinary amount of time at work to cook? Because it's the one thing that seems to be a mismatch, right? You could look at a plate of Freddy's Rearden and be like, oh, that must have taken a lot of time. Mm-hmm. You look at a plate of Passards, not to say that it doesn't look like a lot of work, but it looks so simple sometimes. And you're like, where did all the work go?
Yeah, but it's there. I mean, and I think it only translates, when you eat it. And like, this is the problem we were talking about. This is what you don't see in 2 dimensions on a social media feed. That's what you cannot experience, on a social media feed. It's, it's the same thing. Like one of the greatest chefs of our time, Rene, someone you know very well. It's, when you go and eat there and experience what they do, I mean, their food appears, and, when you look at it, it's visually stunning in so many ways. It's incredibly thoughtful. So much work poured into every single thing. And it's easy to I think, it's easy to dismiss that work. And I think people do oftentimes. But when you go and eat there, it's magic. Like from the moment you walk in the door, it's magic. And there are certain restaurants like that. Arpege is another one. I mean, they're all, there's countless restaurants around this country and around the globe that are that way, where you just kind of walk in, you just know you're in for something special, and then they deliver on every level. It's an incredible thing. I feel like when you have meals like that, like real kind of like benchmark meals in your life, it's like one of those things that just kind of like you do begin to understand the power of great cooking, of the experience that we can offer our guests in our restaurants. Like, it's a special thing because it's easy to trivialize what we do as well. Oh, they're just cooking for the rich. Well,
Yeah, there's a lot of that.
There's a lot of that.
I was just thinking when you were describing Rene and Noma as maybe a new definition for, food as art, because I've eaten at Noma a lot, almost every iteration. And, the most recent one in Kyoto, I finished it and I was like, wow, this is a very complete, almost flawless menu. And it shifted my perception of what like life could be, or it made me think in ways that I did not know was possible before, And I think like food can shift your perception of reality, then it's fucking
powerful.
art.
Yeah.
It like puts you in a different state of mind, not from the dopamine because your pleasure, but you're like, oh, like I see what he's doing. To me, it was kaiseki done in his way, but yet it's very, very respectful, but it was done in a different order. It was, again, expressing something that if you weren't looking, you would never know it was there.
Yeah. I went to the pop-up in Tulum, and I still remember like just being there in a, like literally in a jungle, looking up, and they had lit the canopy of the trees above you. So, it's like at the table level, it was like, about as dim as a normal restaurant would be. But when you looked up, like just so much beauty, bats flying around, like what a magical thing. And also like the vision, and then to execute something that was just so incredibly special was really kind of like it, just mind blowing.
Yeah, that's, Rene gets a lot of credit, but I think the one thing he doesn't get enough credit for is he's really like this Broadway theater-like producer in terms of the environment. Like, I think he's best in class at trying to figure out how he wants people to feel when they sit down. It's really remarkable. But you leave Paris, you come back, quick stop, working for Sirio again, and then where do you wind up in LA?
Spago. With Wolf at the original Spago, which was on Sunset Boulevard, and that's like a magical, like storied place, which I don't know. I mean, Wolfgang was like, I mean, when we were coming up, like, he was right up there with Larry and Larry Forgione and Alice Waters and all those people. And to me, like growing up in New Jersey and living in New York, like California cuisine was something I had no concept of. It was an interesting like 1 year sojourn for me, and it was a good introduction to LA for sure. I got to do a lot of things, working for Wolf and, like cooking the Oscars and things like that, which was like, not something I ever knew I wanted to do. And then once I did it, I was like, yeah, I really don't ever need to do that again. Like cooking for 1,800 people or whatever it was. I guess I kind of felt when I got there like a little bit like a fish out of water.
Because you're an East Coast guy.
I was the East Coast guy, and also actually the best time of that year was when all of the team for the most part shifted to Beverly Hills, because Spago in Hollywood and Spago in Beverly Hills existed at the same time for a little while, for like, I don't know, maybe 6 months or something like that, or 9 months. And I was at the helm of it while the two coexisted. And that part of it I loved, because I just did what I learned in New York, but with the benefit of California ingredients. Frank Chino, legendary farmer from Rancho Santa Fe and, down by San Diego, would come once a month with just unload a van full of, freshly picked whatever it was. And I got to work with it all, and that.
What was your moment when you saw California produce for the first time?
I think it all came out of Frank Chino's van, honestly, because everything else, like in New York, we were lucky. We had a lot of great things to work with in New York. I know like people shit on New York City and what's available there. And yeah, it can be difficult in the fall and winter months, but we got really good stuff in New York. At least I remember working with great ingredients when I was at Le Cirque, and even when I was with Larry, we got great ingredients. But California, I think, what I understood about the produce of California, I learned coming out of Frank Chino's van, because he would just drive up and he would stop at Spago and I don't know I have no idea what the financial arrangement was between Spago and Chino Farms, but I mean, he would just literally like just pick whatever is ready and just bring it all. So sometimes that could be like 4 cases of Cardoons, and other times it could be like the best tomatoes you ever had in your life, and a bunch of other things. It was all really dependent on the season. But yeah, that's where I really kind of like started to learn about it. And then, after that, moved down to the Water Grill.
And you were Water Grill for 6 years.
Yeah, almost 7, yeah.
And I always have this conversation with people when your name comes up and Providence comes up, and I don't know if I do a good job, and I'm not, I won't say defending or whatever, but I feel like at that time you get the moniker as the fish guy, the fish chef. Mm-hmm. I almost feel like sometimes it's been a disservice, because yes, you have a seafood restaurant like Connie and Ted's. Yes, you serve a lot of seafood, but I'm like, no, that's just like, sometimes he's just, no, I don't. I'm like, he's not just the seafood guy.
Yeah. You're
yes. Right. Yes, he cooks fish, but a lot of people cook fish, and he cares about his fish cookery.
Yeah.
Wonderful. But I feel like it's weird that like you just become
that. I have that moniker.
Yeah. I'm like, you're the fish guy. I'm like, wait, do you guys not see everything else?
Yeah. I mean, it's I don't know. It's probably because I'm so vocal about it, because I believe passionately in sustainable seafood, and I believe like it's an important thing that we all need to be invested in our industry, because it's the future of our industry. Otherwise we're all going to be bound to serving only farm raised fish for the rest of our lives. And I know you're a passionate fisherman, mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And I know how much the ocean, the sea means to you, and being able to, be out and catch wild fish. And that is a resource that I feel like we all need to pay a little bit more attention to. I feel like, especially with the current administration that we have in office right now, we're, not heading down the very best path when it comes to conservation and regulation of our fisheries, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I mean, I'm happy to talk about those things, and it is like a label that that's I've probably it's probably my own fault that I have that kind of like label as being a fish chef, because that's what I talk about all the time. But really what I'm passionate about, like, is, at Providence, I mean, we could be serving, it could be an all meat menu. It doesn't matter. Like the expectations would be the same. Level of standard would be the same. The way we approach the work would be the same. It's just, we happen to focus on fish.
That's what I tried to explain.
Yeah.
Because, I've eaten there probably like three times over the pandemic. And that first time I ate there, I had not eaten there since, it was probably at least 10 years. And I was like, wow. And this is right before the renovation as well.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, this is fucking amazing. And
Thank you.
and then I would tell people like, oh yeah, I want to go check that out. I've never been. But he's like, oh, I don't want to just go to a fish place. I was like, wait, what are you talking about? It's like, they serve like everything.
Yeah.
Yes, they serve fish. So that was like me almost becoming an advocate for you, because I was like, wait a second, guys, like, this is a restaurant in Los Angeles, which is celebrating its 20th year, is probably like underrated, but not underrated. But underrated, I think, in its importance in LA culinary canon, for sure. I don't know of any restaurant in LA, to my knowledge, and this is no shade to anybody, that is set up in the way that you are set up, from the structure of the kitchen to the staff, that is a connection of the old ways and bridging it to the new ways. It is a place where if you wanted to learn, and you can see this from the great kitchens, it's just look at the alumni that pass through your door. Almost anybody that's worth a grain of salt in this area has spent time in your kitchen, as they should, because you want to learn the old ways and the new ways at the same time and learn a standard of excellence. And I just was like, this is the best restaurant in LA, in my opinion. And I said, like, if this isn't fucking 3 stars, then I don't know what is, because I've had my share of eating the best restaurants in the world. I was like, what the fuck is going on here? It doesn't make sense to me. I was like, if this was a 3-star restaurant, I think people look at it completely differently from a global scale. And I just think to me, LA has not, because LA just, I feel like as a whole, many people don't understand what you do in the intent and the philosophy. And it drives me a little bit crazy, to be honest.
I don't know what to say to that, other than, I've only ever had like one goal, really, and that was to run a restaurant like Providence, because that's where, I cut my teeth in restaurants like that, like Providence, and yeah, I mean, that has been my goal, you know what I mean? To run a restaurant like that I could be, proud of. And yeah, that's all of it. It's
pretty singular in its approach. It's very hard for me to not recommend it as like, this is not just the best in LA. This is easily one of the best restaurants in the country. And I say that and I've been saying that when you're not here. Yeah. I don't understand it, to me, where I'm like, what the fuck is going on here, guys? Like, do you guys not, this should be like more spoken about. And the level of fucking work you guys put into that restaurant is bananas.
Well, 20 years is a long time, man.
But yes, long time. Congratulations. But it's not been the same restaurant.
No.
And you're constantly tinkering. And we worked on something like a couple years ago, and I was like, wait, you're growing all this fucking food on your fucking restaurant too?
Yeah.
What?
And that's even getting better.
Right?
Yeah.
It's shokunin, it's never resting, it's kaizen, it's all of these principles that I know you adhere to. And I just wonder if LA somehow, whether it's misrepresenting you as just the fish guy, because you are a fish guy, but I was like, what do we need to do so people see the holistic picture of what's happening there? It's just like service, best in class, beverage, probably best in class. You have an insane pastry program that doesn't make any sense to me as to...
it doesn't make any sense. The pastry program makes no sense. The chocolate program makes no sense.
Who's going through this length of pain to make their own chocolate like that?
Yeah. Mill our own flour for the bread, like all of it.
So I was like, man, I want to make sure that people know that listen to this podcast, that it's not just celebrating 20 years of Providence. I think it's like, listen, I think the next 20, I feel like the next 10 plus years, it should be in a different category. Right?
10 years, I'll be an old man.
Yeah. But, but like, that's what I would hope is that like people now see it in a different category. Because like, who else is doing it?
Not a lot of people.
No, there's not one fucking restaurant in LA that's doing it the way you're doing it.
Thank you.
No, but seriously, like I know you know that. Like,
yeah,
you're not going to say that yourself, so I'll say it for you. It's like, wait, like who else is doing that in New York? Maybe a little bit different, but like in terms of trying to be excellent and cook with the highest standards and trying your best to procure the very best ingredients humanly possible, right? And you have a lot of cooks, man.
Oh yeah,
it's a huge brigade.
Yeah, but knock on wood, the restaurant's busy, and it takes a lot of people to produce what we do.
But that's the thing is like you need it to produce the cooks.
Yeah.
So I was like, man, like what can I do to like change? Because it's not like people don't. It's extremely well deserved, and you're packed all the time, and all these things. But like, I feel like the one thing is missing on a conversation level is like, oh yeah, L.A. We have one of the best restaurants in the world. It's not just tacos. It's not just like, oh, you go to K-Town. I'm like, yeah, this is on a short list of the very best restaurants. It's like Alinea's been around 20 years.
Yeah.
It's like French Laundry, Alinea. I'm like, San Francisco clearly has got the 3 stars on lock. LA, I was like, listen.
Yeah, we need to get there. I totally agree with you.
I think that you're there. I don't understand. I don't understand. I spent a lot of time trying to think like a Michelin inspector, spent too much time talking to the inspectors over the years. I don't get it.
Well, maybe we'll get there one day.
What else are you focusing on besides the restaurants?
Well, I mean, I love, outside work, I mean, I love to fish, obviously. I love music. That's like a huge part of my life. I have 2 beautiful kids. Unfortunately, they both live in New York. So I don't get to see him as much as I would like. I mean, my wife and I, we have a great, we're empty nesters now. So we just, adjusting to that new kind of like, it's a completely different regime than when you grow up with, have 2 kids in the house and the whole thing. But I mean, that's pretty much it.
Oh, another thing about Providence, is that like you've had a very long relationship with your partner there.
Donato, yeah.
Who is like a one of one.
Yeah, absolutely. They broke the mold when they made him.
You know?
For better or for worse, they broke the mold. Yeah.
It's rare to have that long-term relationship in this business.
Well, I mean, honestly, I feel like the reason it works is because he, Donato just does not settle. You know what I mean? Like his standards are very, very high, and he came from places in Europe where the type of standards that we try to practice every single day were like drilled into him, and he never let go of them. And he brings it to the team at Providence, and I mean he's the best host that's out there, the best maitre d'hotel I think in the business. But we've got like in June 17th, that's our 20-year anniversary. And we've got like, I think it's about 10 people that have been with us for the whole 20 years. So that, I mean, I think that's an invaluable thing as well.
That's wild.
It's crazy. Like our host, 20 years, a couple of our bussers, 20 years, several of our captains, 20 years. The chef de cuisine, Tristan Atchison, has been with me ever since we opened the doors of Providence. And then even before that, when I was at Water Grill. The chef at Connie and Ted's also started at Providence when we first opened 20 years ago. Sam Baxter. So yeah, we have like a whole, and that's the thing, man. I mean, you know this better than most. Like, you got to have a team. You know what I mean? Like, like Majordomo, like having Jude over there, people that understand your vision, that people that want to build on that vision, people that bring something to the conversation. You can't do it without you. Like, no one can do it alone. Renee has Thomas, like everybody has every chef out there has got, a strong, solid team behind them that helps them do what they do, because it's just, otherwise it's absolutely impossible.
A team that executes your point of view, right? And this is something I would have a lot of conversations. And in retrospect, I'm so happy that we just kept 2 stars at Co for like the longest tenure of all time, because it would have been too much to get the 3rd in retrospect. But one of the conversations I would always have, and I would say as a signifier, maybe it's different now, is the point of view, right? That's such probably the most significant grading thing for them. How would you describe the point of view for your food and experience at Providence? Like, what do you want people to get from you when they're eating your food?
I honestly, I want people to understand the level of quality of the ingredients that we're working with, and also to understand a little bit about where those ingredients come from. And then, we do use fish from all over the world, but the focus is very much through a lens of California. And like the food that we create is hyper seasonal, because everything's tied to either what we're growing at the restaurant or the market in Santa Monica. And so like there's all of these micro season that our food is filtered through, and most dishes revolve around just one ingredient, the fish or the shellfish or the meat, and one singular ingredient. So what I'm hoping is people taste, the flavors of a very seasonal menu that could only be produced in Southern California. You know what I mean? And I think that's our vision, having, working with some of the best ingredients in the world, but also keeping things like as local as we can with regards to everything else on the plate.
Your 20th anniversary, besides having Zayu, you have a guest series as well. Who are some of the chefs?
Well, we already had Andy Ricker and Chris Yembangrung from Night Market. That was our first dinner, which was all... And I invited those guys because, obviously it's a complete juxtaposition, really, like what we do at Providence versus what Chris does at Night Market or what Andy did at Pock Pock. But to my mind, those are 2 of the best chefs working in food today. I think they deliver incredible flavor, and I think I learned to understand Thai food through Chris and Andy and the food that they cook. And they were like, Pock Pock was one of my favorite restaurants in the city when it was here.
So good.
Yeah, just incredible. He's one of those people who just has a fucking knack. Like, and as casual as he is about his approach to, the kitchen and stuff, he just flat out cook, man.
You ask him, he's like, I'm just a painter.
Yeah, he's fucking amazing. And I feel the same way about Chris. Like, honestly, and I feel like our team learned more during that dinner than we probably will doing any of the others, because it's so foreign to what we do. And, the flavors, the ingredients, the palette, like every bit of it was a revelation, really. And also, like, those guys really created a menu that was just so special, man. I thought, like, we did Santa Barbara spot prawns and sea urchin and box crab, and Andy brought this like Tibetan spice with him from Thailand, and we did a beautiful like braised beef dish with finished with black truffle, which of course is way out of his wheelhouse, but it all just worked and was delicious. And then we just had Zayu. Our next dinner is Sean Brock. Our next event is a party on the 18th, the day after our 20-year anniversary, with alumni. So we have Jessica Largy, who you know. We have Brian Dunsmore from Dunsmore in Glassell Park, which is one of my favorite restaurants in town. William Jew from Pizzeria Say. Chris Dane from Lucky Bird in the Grand Central Market. God, I'm forgetting people. Well, Sam Baxter, who's the chef at Connie and Ted's, who's an alum of Providence that's going to be returning. Kelly Whitaker from Colorado, who has a bunch of restaurants there. Ray and Cynthia, Ray Hayashi and Cynthia Hetlinger, that have Ryla in Manhattan Beach or Hermosa Beach. So they're all coming back. And then after that, Sean Brock.
On the 31st?
Yeah, July 31st. Sean Brock and my friend Wida Papka from Kentucky are going to be cooking. and that'll be like a Southern inspired meal because my wife is a native of Kentucky, so we had to get some Southern food in there. And then after that, David Kinch.
And Moro.
Yeah, no, Mauro can't make it. I know that one.
All good.
Yeah,
that's still getting Kinch out of retirement.
I know. So David Kinch on July, or I think that's in November, and then after that, we have Gérard Passadet from Le Petit Nice in France.
It's funny. I feel like Kinch's food is of Santa Cruz and Carmel. Like, to me, that's what I think. It's influence from Passard, but it's done in a way that is uniquely just of that area, looks of that area, taste of that area. And I feel like yours is an amalgamation of all these things, your life as well. But it's like, to me, it's LA. It's like,
oh, I totally agree.
It's LA version of all of these things, but that's why I'm like, nobody's doing it.
Yeah, because but also, like, before I came to Los Angeles, I didn't know shit about, about Japanese food or Chinese food or Korean food or Mexican food, like any of those things. Like, growing up in suburban New Jersey, you don't see a lot of that. All those influences that found their way subtly into the food that we cook now are products of my time spent in Los Angeles, which at this point is like 30 years.
Wow. Well, I mean, you have really an illustrious alumni list, right? And again, if you look at any top kitchen in LA or around the country itself, there's a good chance that one of those cooks or sous chefs spent their time, at your spot in Providence. One of the things I feel like, again, is the best way to indicate the greatness of a chef is the alumni. So what is your how do you judge talent in the kitchen, right? Like, do you think that how often is that you get the cook that is naturally gifted, that also wants to put extraordinary amounts of work in?
It still does happen. We have a lot of talented people in the kitchen. And we have we've been lucky in that sense, ever since we opened. I still see kids come in that I just marvel at what they're able to do. And to me, the best cook are the ones that can do very, very difficult things and make them look easy. And that amazes me, because I know there are some stations at Providence that I would be hard pressed to work if I had to do it. You know what I mean? No, seriously, at my age, and it would be, I know there's one station that I'm thinking of that I don't know if I could do it on my best day anymore. You know what I mean?
It's okay.
I know.
It's a young person's game.
No, I know. I don't.
It really is.
Thank God I'm in a position where that will never happen. You know what I mean? Someone will do it before me. But yeah, it gets really, it's, I have a lot of hope for the future, because I still think there are great cooks out there. And I think not all, but so many of them, they come from immigrant communities, which Los Angeles is rich in immigrant communities, obviously. But, because I feel our world has changed so much, and food is not the kind of thing that most people, fresh food is not the kind of thing that most people have in their homes anymore, because, it's just so easy. You just sit on your couch, you can order whatever you want and bring it to your door in 30 minutes. So people don't have to learn to cook anymore. And you can clearly see the kids that grew up in homes where their mother cooked or their father cooked or their grandmother cooked or something like that. The kids who grew up that way, they have an ease with food that kids that grew up eating takeout every night of the week don't have. And that is obvious, in so many ways. Ask somebody to cook crew meal and give them, 25 pounds of chicken thighs and see what they come up with. Something very, for something very, very simple. Somebody that didn't grow up with food is probably just going to put salt and pepper on them, throw them in the convection oven, pull them out when they're done. You know what I mean? Someone that grew up cooking or seeing food being cooked in their home all the time, it's going to bring a little bit of their home into what they do. You know what I mean? And you'll taste that and you'll see that. So yeah, I feel and that's why I think there's such a preponderance now of young kids. I'm thinking of places like Yangban or Kato or the list goes on and on, where people have young kids have grown up in an immigrant household, cooked in more, in a Western style restaurants. And then eventually, once they have a chance to do their own thing, get out there and cook something that really means something to them on a very deep level. And to me, those are some of the most exciting restaurants that we have in Los Angeles, in New York, in Chicago, all over the country. And I think that's a wonderful development for, because you don't have to cook French food or Italian food or whatever. Of course, if you're cooking Italian food, you got a lot better shot in LA. But there is, it's like Meilin now is the 88 Club, I think it's called. Like, I'm excited to see more and more restaurants like that.
I mean, Yongbon and Cato for sure. It's like, I don't know how. It's delicious art. That's the way I would say too. You're seeing a side of culture expressed in a way that had not been done before. One more thing about talent in the kitchen. Like, how often are you right when you identify talent, right? When you earmark somebody, when they come in, you're like, okay, like this person might be like very successful. What are you looking for?
Well, number one, like somebody that's not afraid to work. Somebody that'll come in and, like somebody that says, I'm gonna come in early and work with the fish butchers, and then they actually do it. Somebody that comes in and say, I want to work with the sous chefs and learn how to make the sauces that they're making, and then actually does it. Like, I do think like in the modern kitchen, especially in a regimented kitchen like Providence, where there are like the skill set that you learn on one station might not be terribly vast, because what you're expected to do on a daily basis is create one dish most of the time. And so like there's a certain repetition to that, and you will gain all sorts of skills in that repetition. But in order to like really branch out, you've got to put in the time, then move from, say, the garde manger to the fish station to the meat station to the veg station to whatever. And then you really get, a breadth of knowledge. So to me, it's kids that are good enough at what they do that they can handle all of their mise en place and then go help someone else. To me, that's a skill. Like, they're able to compartmentalize their work and manage it in a way that it gives them time to pursue the other things that are going on within the kitchen. And also people that don't work with, oftentimes people work with blinders on in our business. It's very easy if you work on the sauté station or fish station or meat station to not see what's going on the other stations around you. And that is a real, that's definitely going to hinder your development.
I've always felt family meal is the best litmus test. I was like, almost never fails.
Yeah.
Right? You're like, oh, it's a huge difference when someone spends a lot of time when they don't need to make something beautiful, to feed their coworkers, the people that they're working with. They're not getting any recognition for that. But when they kill themselves to make something awesome, I'm like, wait, something's happening here.
Honestly, like I have that discussion all the time with people. Like, to me as a chef or as a cook, like this is your chosen career. This is what you want to do with your life. Like, every opportunity to cook, it's never a burden. It's an opportunity to show people what you can do, to show people like how much you love what you're doing. I still remember when I was a kid, when I was at Le Cirque, for a long time, I just get my ass kicked day in and day out. And like, when you step into a kitchen like that, really kind of like no matter where you come from, there's always a period of adjustment. You've got to, figure out how to keep up with the pace, figure out how to meet the standard, all those things. And I had a hard time at first. And one day, when I started there, I was a Rearden. So when you're the Rearden at Le Cirque back in the day, it meant you worked the grill station and you also cooked crew meal for whatever, it's like 70, 80 people every day. And I would, bust my ass to make something nice. And one time I made a dish like a lentilles de Puy, and I made a mirepoix and crispy bacon and sherry vinegar and butter and herbs and aromatics and stuff. And the chef and Sylvain looked at it and he tasted it and it was like, this is delicious. I love it. And he said, and then the next salmon dish that he put on the menu used that same thing. And it was the first time I had any recognition for what I was doing, because up till that point it had all been, he's the new guy, and he's going to pay the price that a new guy pays. And I did for a long time until that day. And that really was like it was like a turning point in that kitchen for me, where the chef understood that I at least could cook. You know what I mean?
Everything you just said, I could not agree more. And it's some way I feel like, and I'm sure a lot of chefs express this to their staff. Like, congratulations, you chose one of the most physically demanding, mentally intense jobs. Why would you want to be mediocre at it?
I totally agree.
Just do your best and give a shit. And I think that, to me, that's the talent. That's the quality I look for the most, right? almost more than talent. And I feel like people, when they haven't seen a lot of cooks, not unless they're sort of in that position to do so, when you see a physically gifted cook, what does that mean to you? Like, there's just something where like, whoa, they're really good at this.
Yeah, they're smooth. They're working within themselves. Don't get flustered. Always able to keep up with the pace, and also like find the next gear when they have to. Like hustle is an important thing. Hustle is like just in the same way that hustle is important in sports. It's important in a professional kitchen. You know what I mean? Like the way you walk from one task to the next, the way you, like at Providence, where we have a dry storage on second story. Now, I don't want people running up there, but I also don't want people moseying. You know what I mean? Like you need to, you always need to demonstrate like a certain level of urgency in the kitchen from the moment you punch the clock until the moment you punch back out. Like it's imperative as a chef, as a cook. And I feel like I honestly, like back in the day, like when I was not as evolved as I am today, like I fired a guy just for the way he walked into the kitchen. I'm not proud of it, but like he came in, like walked in there like he was walking to a picnic. I was like, bro, what are you doing, man? I mean, this is probably, almost 20 years ago, but I'll never forget it, and he won't forget it either. And I still am in touch with that kid every once in a while because I think he appreciates the fact that, like,
Well, yeah, I mean, like a sense of urgency. Every second can. If you save 5 seconds, that might literally be the difference between a bad service and a good service.
We talk about that all the time. Like anticipation, it's such an important thing. The point that I make to the cooks all the time is like that especially when you're running a restaurant where you're serving multi-course meals, like the moment that a guest goes like this and looks down at their watch, a certain portion of the magic has disappeared. You have to suspend that. You have to push that away. Time should not matter when you're having when you're eating a meal at a restaurant like Providence or Momofuku Ko or the French Laundry or Per Se. It should be every moment is just, you're relishing every moment.
I have found, and I wonder if you agree, that because in the past you would get promoted in these highly ambitious kitchens to sous chef because you were super good at cooking, right? And sometimes cooking truly can come more easy to individuals than others.
Sure.
Like that's what I mean by naturally gifted. You're like, why is this so fucking easy for you? You're just faster. Everything is just easy. The flow, as you say, the movements are effective and efficient. And it's so easy and they're so good at it that they don't struggle. And I feel like that, for the longest time, that's how you promoted people. And I actually think that actually is not how we should be promoting people.
Okay, what is it?
I think we should be finding, how do you sort of bridge that gap a little bit where the person that gives a shit, maybe not as physically gifted, long term, I feel like those cooks make better chefs than the super talented. I really do. If you look at it, almost, I feel very strongly that the cooks that wind up being the best chefs were never the top cook in the kitchen. And I feel like it runs pretty parallel to sports, right? Like the best players probably don't make the best coaches because they don't understand why the average player can't be as good as they were. And I've worked for sous chefs that are just so good and they can't understand, hey, Chang, why do you suck? And I'm like, I'm just not as good as you are. So I think when you have to actually delegate and organize a team, having that empathy of not being able to being able to understand how most people can't be at that high level is probably like a real benefit. I think that talent, ultimately being too talented in a kitchen, is almost a curse.
Yeah. Well, I've had people like just completely surprise me, like from out of nowhere. As an example, like we had a pastry chef for a long time. He was there, I think, like 12 years or something. His name was Adrian Vasquez. Super talented, came out of Chicago, like modernist approach. Like I remember that when he first started, it was a Sunday. He was supposed to start on Monday. And he was like, no, I just got to get to work. I'm going to start today. I was like, okay. And so the chef de cuisine at the time, whatever, brought him on, did the whole, he just got him acclimated and he went to work. And And I checked in with the chef on like right before service started, and I was like, "How's everything going? How's Adrian doing?" "Oh, he's doing great. He's putting on a new pedophore." I'm like, "Oh, okay, what is it?" And he goes, "It's a powdered chocolate chip cookie." I was like, "What?" He goes, "It's a powdered chocolate chip cookie." So it was like I didn't know you could make a powdered chocolate chip cookie at this point. This is like 19 years ago, and because he had came from Chicago, a more modernist school, like he was using Tapego maltodextrin, like, so a little brown butter turned into a powder, a little cocoa butter turned into a powder, cocoa powder, whatever else, and he made a powdered chocolate chip cookie that we served on a spoon with a little shot of milk, warm milk, on the side. I was like, okay, but I couldn't wrap my head around it. Anyway, when this guy Adrian decided to move on, like 12 years later, we were looking for a pastry chef, and so the first people that we gave a shot were the people that were on his staff. And his assistant was this kid named David Rodriguez, who was, big guy, quiet, had kids young. So for that reason, very, very responsible, never missed a day of work, very punctual, the whole thing. So I was like, okay, David, he said, "I want to do a tasting." I said, okay, great. And we had done a couple of others and weren't really happy. And this guy came up with like 5 desserts and a couple of pedophores that just blew me away. And I did not see it coming. Like, I knew he was a great assistant to Adrian, and I knew he was able to execute the menu that Adrian created, but I had no idea that he had that in him. So that kind of stuff happens. And then the pastry chef that followed David, same scenario. Young woman, had been David's assistant, also very responsible, very mature, the whole thing. And her name was Jessie Liu. And she was from Taiwan, and born and raised there, and then moved to Los Angeles. And anyway, she brought a whole different sort of like viewpoint to the desserts and to the pastry menu, and was one of we've only had Adrian. I think we've had 4 pastry chefs in 20 years. So like Adrian had a long tenure, then David, then Jesse, and now Mac, the young guy, the young chef that we have now, Mac Daniel Dimla, who is maybe the most talented pastry chef I've ever, had the pleasure of working with, because he can do it all. Makes his own chocolate from, bean to bar, has an incredible bread program, is unbelievable with laminated doughs and things. Like, pedophores are incredible. He's just like unbelievably talented. I feel so fortunate to like have had the opportunity to work with people like this.
It's amazing. The pastry program is just unbelievable.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
I was thinking, the moments when somebody has superior work ethic and empathy and drive with talent, right? You get a Mauro Colagreco or Pascal Barbeau or somebody like that, where it's like, it's not that it doesn't happen. It just seems to be a rarer thing these days, where you're like, whoa, what is happening over there?
Yeah. Yeah, it is amazing. We see people like that. Like Mauro is like, he's a force of nature. And his food is amazing. He cooked at Providence for our 10-year anniversary, also with Kinch. And that was just a great dinner. So exacting, and so like, the way he cooks is very different, and the way he thinks about food is very different.
His thought process about food is from another planet.
But he if he had a restaurant in LA, it would be amazing.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, if he could work all the time with the ingredients we have available to us here, he'd be just fucking amazing, like unstoppable, as he is in France. But and also like just a great person, like a really nice,
but very serious in the kitchen.
Yeah, very serious in the kitchen. Yeah. But
you did that Kyoto thing with.
I did.
Kikura.
Yeah, the year after you did.
Yeah, I was with Mauro, and I just, that was one of the best things I've ever seen anybody do. And Mauro Colagreco, he had 2 stars at Mentone at the time, and everyone's doing their thing because you almost have to cook this final project, and then you're assigned like the cooking school to do it. Like, Mauro literally used every cook at the school.
What did he do?
So he had all the Kyoto vegetables that are just different, right? The turnips, everything there tastes and feels different, juicier. So we had like 10 or 12 different vegetables, and he was juicing them all, turning them into dashi, and then cooking the vegetables in the dashi. And I was like, that's fucking brilliant, man.
It is brilliant.
And like at some point, like it clarified it so it looked like different colors of water. You know, I was like, what the fuck is going on here? And he did this whole demonstration, and he got a standing ovation because everyone was like, whoa, and they tasted it. I was like, that is one of the smartest things I've ever fucking seen. He juiced it, sort of clarified, like it made a raft, so you still had the essence of, right? And I was like, how did he get it so clear? All of this beautiful, like carrots, the carrots look like Kool-Aid water. And I was like, what? And he was cooking everything, and he made that plate of all the kyosai in the individual components, cooked in its own dashi, because, you know, they're trying to promote all the umami.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I think that was one of the most brilliant things I've ever fucking seen in my life.
Just when you just take the apron off and walk away. You know, it's like if you're a drummer, you watch Neil Peart play. You're like, oh, fuck, man, just forget it.
Yeah, but I saw him. He was like, everyone's like jotting out their idea, and he was just thinking. And then he did it. I was like, oh, shit.
Yeah.
This guy's on another fucking level.
Yeah. The year I did it, it was me and Kinch and Rene Redzepi and a guy named Hans Valamaki from Helsinki. So that was like, yeah, it was nuts. It was
what a
nuts.
great trip.
Yeah, and then I went back. In 2023, we went back to Kyoto. I took my kids and my wife, and we went to Kikonoi. I took my kids there, and Morata-san came out. And his son is actually kind of like in the process of becoming the chef. And you can see like a little bit more modern influence in some of the dishes there now. But so his son came out and cooked ayu for us in our little tatami room. And then at the end of the meal, Morata-san came out, and I was just so touching. You know, spending time with him would have been like, like spending time with Alice Waters in Berkeley in the early 70s, or, spending time with Paul Bocuse and in Lyon.
He's the godfather.
Yeah, walking around the city with him, it's like...
He's the Don.
It'd be like walking around with Beyonce or something, or Taylor Swift.
Every time I see him or with him in Kyoto, I feel not that it's any mafia related. It feels like he's the guy in the white in Godfather 2 walking around the town. I'm like, whoa, this guy literally runs this town.
Yeah. As an example, like one time, Kinch and I were in the Gion, like walking around looking at antiques we had some free time, and like we saw this beautiful set of these incredible lacquer bowls, all with different fish hand painted on them. And we were going to buy them. They're 18, and we were going to split them 9 and 9. And Kinch was like, maybe before we buy them, we should just get Murata's advice. So the translator that we were with called Murata. 20 minutes later, Murata comes comes down the alley in his Jaguar, parks right in front of the place, steps out, comes in and looks at the bowls, and he goes, no. And we just left. He's like, no, too much money. It was very funny.
We've had you for almost 2 hours. We should get you out of here, but we're gonna do one quick Ask Dave, and then we're gonna take a break and let you go. All right, we're gonna do one Ask Dave seafood question, right? And this comes from JT Photo. And I'm now curious as to what you might say to this, because this is not a typical fish that you might cook with. How do you cook a beautiful Clearwater northern pike or pike? How do you cook pike? And for those that don't know, it's a very sharp teeth, very long, looks like a barracuda.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, the traditional way in France is to make quenelles à la brochette.
With a crayfish sauce.
Yeah. So that's the way to do it, because pike and pickerel, the thing they share in common is they have tons of bones. And so they have to be filleted in a certain way, and they have to be treated in a certain way. Honestly, to me, I think there's a reason why the French adopted that technique, and it's pretty much the fish that they use for that, and it's because it's what it's best suited to. Which is, it's difficult. You got to make a mousseline with eggs and cream. And
do you think it's worth it?
Yeah, like really great, like quenelles à la brochette is that's an amazing dish. It's a classic that's withstood probably a couple hundred years in France. When I was a kid and I used to fish up in Maine every year with my dad, when we would catch pike and pickerel, we would just fillet it, skin it, salt it, and then beer batter. Like, it was absolutely delicious, just deep fried like that in a nice moose head beer batter. That's what we used to use when we were out there.
I'll get you out of here with one last question. Now that you've cooked and filleted and beer battered pike, would you ever put LA carp on the menu?
Probably not. No, from the LA River, no.
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 It's disgusting.
It's yeah. I did see when I was in Kyoto at Miyamaso, which is a restaurant, a 2 Michelin-star restaurant in the mountains outside Kyoto, where he only used fish from his little region there, and the only saltwater fish they used was mackerel. Because there's a tradition in Kyoto that they would salt mackerel at the pier, at the port, and then bring it up into the hills. But he would serve carp as sashimi. But he had ponds in front of the restaurant where the fishermen would catch them wild and then bring them to him. And he would keep them in the pond for a couple of days, just kind of like
Is that the
clean
kitchen
'em
where
out.
the river goes through the kitchen?
No, there wasn't a river through the kitchen, but
Or like a creek?
yeah. Well, I mean, the property is just surrounded by it, and it's up in the hills. And so I mean, he served like carp, freshwater eel, fresh like trout, ayu, things like that, and just beautiful vegetables. A lot of foraged ingredients and stuff. They used to call him the Michel Bras of Kyoto.
I think it's the same guy I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
Well, Chef, I think we should get you out of here, man.
Well, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure. I love talking to you, man. We have a very similar history, so it's like, yeah.
Yeah, listen,
We'll see eye to
I
eye.
want the very best for your restaurant because I love that kind of food. I think it's so fucking important to have in the ecosystem, and that's why it's like we can't lose this dining. We need to celebrate it. It's the restaurant that, like, if I need to like go out and have that kind of experience, there's no other restaurant in LA that can sort of satiate that. So
Thank you.
I'm so grateful. Thanks, Chef.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Chef Michael Cimarusti. That kept on going. I feel like I could have talked to him for hours and hours. I mean, if it wasn't clear enough, I'm a big fan of his work. I love Providence. I think that what he does, for the fishing industry and sustainability and him being so vocal about it is awesome. And he's just a good guy in general, but he's not just a fish guy. That guy is just a great chef. So very, very important figure. Anyway, thank you for listening. Subscribe to the show on Spotify, and also thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. You can watch us on YouTube at The Dave Chang Show. Send us your Ask Daves to askdave@majordomomedia.com. Add your favorite food moments from your favorite movies to majorfoodporn.com. Give us 5 stars.